Okay, so we're up to Chav Daled Amud Beis. What I'd like to do is to restart the Gemara after the Mishnah for two reasons. First of all, just to get a flow going. Also, I don't think I explained a certain point properly. I want to redo it. The Mishnah is describing, again, the differences between A and B. There's a couple of Mishnahs in a row. So the Mishnah said that there's a difference between Cheres Kalim and other materials. The difference is two parts. Cheres does not become Tameh from touching the outside. If something tamei touches the outside of the kli, it's still tahar, as opposed to every other kli, it transmits tumah from the outside as well. Secondarily, cheres has a stringency that nothing else has, which is it'll become tamei if something is tamei in its airspace. If it enters the cavity and even it doesn't touch the walls, it just merely is suspended inside, tamei, as opposed to other kalim. So the outside is tahar as opposed to the other kalim, but the airspace is metame as opposed to the other kalim. That's the Mishnah said. So let's start the Gemara again. Tana Rabbanan, Aver Kli Cheres Tame. The airspace of a Kli Cheres is able to transmit Tumah, meaning to receive Tumah. Meaning, if something Tame is suspended in the airspace, even if it doesn't touch the inside of the walls, it is Tame. The Gabi Tahar, but the outside of a Kli Cheres does not accept Tumah. But the other kalim, the opposite. Aver kol kalim tar. All other kalim, if you suspend something inside, if you suspend a sheretz inside a metal kli, it's still tahar. Bigaban tameh. But if a sheretz touches the outside of the kli is tameh. Nimtza tar b'kli cheres tameh b'chol kalim tar b'chol kalim tameh b'kli keres. Okay, good. Minani mili. How do I know this? How do I know that the inside of the airspace of a kli cheres is metame, is able to transmit tumah? It'll receive tumah, not transmit tumah, huh? Correct. Merely from the suspension inside. The Tana Rabbanan Toichai. The pasuk says that if something is inside a kli cheres, it's tamei. Afal pi shaloi naga. Toichai means it's merely suspended inside, even if it doesn't touch the walls. Says the Gemara. How do you know? Maybe Toichai means where it touches the inside. Maybe Toichai means where a sheretz falls in and touches the bottom of the kli. Ata Omer Afal pi shaloi naga eleim kein naga. So if Yosim Mal Tumas Omer Nemar Toichai l'tamei. It says regarding it says the word toichai. Actually, it says the word toichai twice. One regarding transmitting tumah to the kli, and one regarding food that's in the kli becoming tameh. Ma nemar toichai l'tameh v'nemar toichai l'tameh. Ma toichai arma l'tameh. Just like the toichai when it comes to the food inside. Afa pishalei naga. Now this is the point I wanted to clarify. If the food is inside the kli, when something is suspended inside, the food is tameh. Even if the food did not touch the kli. I'll give you a very simple example. If I fill this kli, let's say this is cheres, I fill this with mustard seeds. Which of the seeds, and then something is suspended inside, all the seeds are tameh. But which of the seeds are actually touching the kli? Just the bottom layer, which means there's a tremendous amount of food that are tameh not being touching the kli, but merely being inside the kli, even though there's no contact to the kli, they're tameh. So too, the word toichai regarding the tameh item itself, it transmits tumah even though there's no contact. Meaning, we find the word toichai regarding the sheretz inside the kli, and we find the word toichai regarding food inside the tameh kli. Just like food inside the tameh kli does not have to touch the walls, so to the sheretz does not have to touch the walls. That's how I wanted to clarify that point. And by the way, Rashi points out that if you fill it with mustard seeds, when it's tameh, all the mustard seeds become tameh, even though they don't touch the bottom. They're not accepting tumah from the other mustard seeds. Rashi points out because first of all, they're too small. Mustard seeds are too small to transmit tumah. Food has to be the size of kabeya to transmit tumah. And also, if they were receiving tumah from the first layer, then it would be like rishon tesheni. They would have different statuses. All the items inside, it's exeris hakasev, as we'll see, that all the food inside a kli cheres become tameh, even if they didn't touch the walls. So you don't have to have contact with the kli. So to the sheretz itself does not have to contact with the kli. That's what we did yesterday. Good. Says the Gemara v'hasa minolan. And how do I taka know that if the food is inside the kli, it's tameh, even if it did not touch the walls? Meaning the case of the mustard seeds. Maybe the Torah is saying it's only tameh if it touches the walls. The Torah basically gives a blanket rule. Meaning the fact that the Torah says that food in a kli cheres is going to be tameh, it means even a case of mustard seeds. You're right. If we were just talking about apples, 2 apples that hit the bottom, then yeah, they're touching the walls. But the Torah says all food is tameh. All food includes all food, even a case of mustard seeds. So if I fill this up with mustard seeds, 99% of it are not touching the walls of the kli. And yet it's tamei. So you don't need physical contact. So too when the sheretz is going inside the kli, he doesn't have to touch the walls. Merely suspended inside the walls is enough to be metameh. Good. I have a very simple kavachomer. What's the leniency of a kli cheres? We know the stringency. The stringency is that if the tameh is inside suspended, it's tameh. But what's the leniency? If something tummy touches the outside, it's tahar. Make a kavachomer. If it's able to receive tumah from mere airspace, kavachomer. If something touches on the outside, it should be tameh. Meaning, what is the source? What is the source that the outside of a kli cheres is not accepting tumah? Says the Gemara, mikavachomer.
So if the outside, let's say you're cutting glass, your ferrets, and
Yeah.
and a sheretz touches the outside,
Tahar.
the whole kli
Everything. It's not makabel tumah. Nothing. Nothing happened. So it says the Gemara, Uma kol kelim shem tam bavir mitam gavon, kli cheres shem tam bavir, and din shem tam gavon. If kli cheres is so strict that it's makabel the airspace, kavachomer should receive tumah by touching the outside. So what's the source that the kli cheres is not makabel tumah from the outside? So the Gemara has a very interesting perspective. Let me say it outside, and then we'll see it inside. It's a very interesting source. The source is as follows. The pasuk is saying regarding tumas oil, that if there's a dead body in a room, all open kalim are now tameh. If the kli is sealed, it's not makabel tumah because the kli separates between the cover of the kli separates. That's what the pasuk is referring to. Now the pasuk does not talk about what type of kalim. All the pasuk says is that if it's open, it's tameh. If it's sealed, it's not. The Gemara understands that when it says it's open, it's tameh. You know what it's actually referring to? It's a kli that receives tumah from the opening, even if it doesn't touch the base. The fact that the Torah says kli pasuach, that it's makabel tumah, it's referring specifically to a type of kli that the tumah will enter into the pasuach, into the opening of the cavity, without even touching the bottom, i.e. a kli cheres. You know what the pasuk says? If it's covered, there's no tumah. Why? Because the outside is not makabel tumah. So it's a revamping of the words of the pasuk. Meaning, Pashas the pasuk is referring to tumas oil with a dead body, and that the top is a chaytzeitz, chatzitza. Now it's like a different shot. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra, v'chol kli pasuach asher ein samid pasil olav. Any open kli that is not covered is tamei. What type of kli? Ezu kli shetum asay kaidemes lepischai. What type of kli does the tumah transmit through the opening, even if it doesn't touch the actual kli? It's kaidemes lepischai. The tumah goes through the opening, meaning that it's merely tamei through the opening, even without contact, i.e., kli cheres. And what does the pasuk say? It's only tamei if it's open. But if it's covered, tahar. If it's covered, it's tahar. Why? Because the outside is not mekabel tumah. That's the source, that a kli cheres is outside is not mekabel tumah. Okay. Now says the Gemara, good point, very good. I have another question. A metal kli, it's makabel tumah from the outside, right? As we'll see in a moment, this pasuk is referring to dafka kli cheres, that it's sealed, it's tahar. All of the kalim would be tameh because they're makabel tumah from the outside. So metal is, but if I suspend the sheretz in a metal kli, it's tahar. Make a kavachomer. If it's mekabel tumah from the outside, it's more severe than a kli cheres. Kavachomer, it should be mekabel tumah from the airspace. In other words, what the Gemara is basically doing is, how do you know the halachas are separate? So it says the Gemara, Yehei kol akelim metam mavir mekavachomer uma kli cheres she'en metam megaboy metam maviroi kol akelim shemtam megavan and did shemtam maviron. How do I know that the average kli is not mekabel tumah from the airspace? Meaning, how do I know this is a special halacha by cheres and not other kalim? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you. Amar Kra Tocho, it says that a kli cheres is mekabel tumah from tocho, from the airspace. Tocho shel zeh v'lo tocho shel acher. Dafka cheres and no other kli. Tocho shel zeh v'lo tocho shel acher. Okay, it's a special gzeres hakosiv. Tocho shel zeh dafka cheres. Now here's the problem. Hani tocho hudarshinon. Don't we already darshan tocho? The Gemara says in other places in Shas, don't we darshan tocho to mean other things? So the Gemara explains like this. It says tocho twice, that's two, but each one could have said toch. So the extra vav is another two. So you have four drushes, basically. I got four to play with. I got four cards. I got toich, toichai, toich, toichai. I got 4. Each one is darshan differently. How so? Hani toicha dashina, arba toichai ksivi. There are 4 drushes to play with, because again, it says the word toichai twice, but each one could have said toich. So 2 words, 2 extra vavs. I got 4. Let's go through each one. Toichai, toich, toich, toichai. Fine, good. I got 4. So what are the 4? Chadu gufe. One is merely to tell me that food inside of a kli cheres is mekabel tuma. Okay, number 1. Chadu gzereshava. One is to tell me that it's mekabel tuma merely in the airspace. Right, as we said before, just like the food is mekabel tuma without contact, so to the sheretz is mekabel tuma. So I got one is mekabel tuma by the food, one is mekabel tuma by the airspace alone. Number 3 is chad tochel shezav tochel shalacher. 3 is to tell me that it's dafka. A cheres has this halacha that airspace is mekabel tuma, not metal, and not any other kli. And the 4th one is toichai v'loy toich toichai bafilu kli sheta. So article has a picture, but basically, imagine this is a cheres. So we said that if a sheretz is in the inside, it's tameh. What if inside this cheres I have a metal kli, which his mouth is sticking up? It's higher than the actual than the entrance. The halacha is the food inside the metal kli are tahar, meaning you have the cheres, sheretz. Inside the cheres there's a metal kli whose mouth is above the lip, and inside the metal kli there's apples. The halacha is that the apples are tahar. Why? Because the metal is chaytzetz, creates a separation between the apples and the sheretz. Again, I have kli, cheres, sheretz, metal, kli, apples.
Wait, where's the sheretz is going to the airspace? Where's the sheretz?
Airspace. Metal, cheres, airspace of a sheretz, metal, kli, apples. Apple full, kli full of apples. Whatever, it's not so complicated. You have a cheres, and then you have a big cheres with a sheretz hanging in it, and then inside the cheres is a metal kli full of apples. So the halacha is that the metal kli full of apples is tahar. It's in the airspace, and it's mekabel tuma from the outside. So if you think about it, huh? But I understand that, but you might think that because the entire airspace transmits tuma, and metal, we don't find a distinction between outside and inside. So it's not like the outside is like not mekabel tuma like a cheres. Outside is the same. So you might think that the tuma flies through. No, kamash malon, it causes a chatzitza. Now, yeah, it's not touching it. Obviously, if it's touching it, it's pasha. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the 4th drasha. Good. 1 second. Oh, actually, the inner utensil does not contact tuma from the outer one either through touching it or through being in the airspace. No, but that's not the sheretz. It's the air. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, I believe it's true only when it's not touching the actual sheretz. I think it's pasha. Yeah. Okay. Now says the Gemara one more halacha. One last halacha. The only thing left to figure out is why do metal kalim mekabel tuma from the outside, right? Cheres is not because it says kol kli pasuach asher ein samid pasil olav, which means it's only mekabel tuma when it's open. If it's sealed, then it's a cheres. Meaning this pasuk is referring to cheres because it says kol kli pasuach, which is that the tuma is tamei even merely from the entrance of the kli, even without touching it. So it's a cheres. And it says, "Ein samid pasil olav tamei," that it's only tamei when it's open, but if it's sealed, it's not makabel tuma from the outside. So says the Gemara, maybe all kalim should not be makabel tuma from the outside.
Why? We said specifically earlier.
Oh, so that's the Gemara's response. The Gemara says, all kalim should not be makabel tuma from the outside, makabel chomer, umakli cheresh metam maviro, ena metam megavo, kol kalim she'en metam maviro, ena din she'tam megavo. If kli cheres, which is more severe because it's makabel tuma from the airspace, does not accept tuma from the outside, then metal, which is not makabel tuma from the airspace, kava chomer should not makabel tuma from the outside. And the Gemara is going to respond that we said before. It's dafka chol kli pasuach asher and samid pasil alav. this drasha, which is metaher the outside, is dafka by a kli cheres. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra v'chol kli pasach shein samid pasal lav tamei. Yeah. Hi, who the chein samid pasal lav hayesh samid pasal of tahar hakol kelim bein shein samid pasal aleim bein shein samid aleim metamin. This special drasha is dafka for a kli cheres. All of the kelim do not have a heter from the outside. Okay, good. New Mishnah. The Mishnah is basically going to be saying the following: Tahar b'kli eitz, tamei b'kli mateches. There's one situation where kli eitz is more severe than kli metal, meaning wood is sometimes more severe than metal when mekabel tuma, and sometimes metal is more severe than wood. How so? The Gemara will explain. The Gemara clarifies. Tan Rabbanan gulmei kli eitz tameim. Okay. The one case, I'll say it outside, I'll say this a bit. The one case where wood is more severe than metal is, let's say I have a wooden bowl. I'm a bowl maker. I take a piece of wood, I carve out a bowl. Now, it's not finished yet because I didn't make like the fancy, ornaments on the side, the design, but it's a functioning bowl. It's makabel tumah. Even though it's not finished yet, it's functional, it's makabel tumah. Metal kli, that same metal bowl, without the finishing touches, not makabel tumah yet, because it's not finished yet. That's where wood is more severe than metal. And the Gemara will explain why. Metal is more severe than wood in that if you have a flat wood, it's called pshute kli eitz, which is if you have a wooden utensil that's a cutting board, it's not makabel tumah, because it doesn't have a cavity. It's just a piece of wood. But metal that's flat, a metal cutting board, is makabel tumah. So that's where metal is more severe than wood, and wood is sometimes more severe than metal. Okay. The Gemara speaks it out. Ten Rabbanan, gulmei kli eitz, unfinished wooden products, which means you have a wooden product that is not finished yet. So it's missing the ornaments, it's missing the little touch-ups on the top. The halacha is tameim. It's still makabel tumah, even though it's not finished yet, it's still makabel tumah. But pshuteyen. But if you have a flat wooden utensil, even if it's finished, it's tahar. It's not makabel tumah because it doesn't have a cavity. But metal is the opposite. Gulmei kli matachos tahorim. Unfinished metal utensils are not makabel tumah because they're not finished yet. Even though they're functioning, they're not finished yet. Pshuteyen tameim. But flat metal utensils, which are finished, are makabel tumah. Nim tatar b'kli eitz, tahar tamei b'kli matachos. Tar b'kli matachos, tamei b'kli eitz. That which is tahar by A is tamei by B, and vice versa.
What's the kli eitz? Is that the base kibble? Like what is the defining factor when it becomes?
It has to have a cavity, functioning and a cavity. That's it. Says the Gemara, Elohein gulmei kli eitz. What does it mean unfinished wood products that's still makabel tumah? We said if it's unfinished, it's still makabel. What does it mean unfinished? So I'm going to give you an example. Kol she'asid lashov, any wooden utensil that's not yet polished, or l'shabetz, or studded, meaning it doesn't have those like nice studs. They would put like little pendants or some things on it to make it look fancy. It doesn't have that yet. Or legarer, it's not planed yet, which is not fully polished. Lecharchev, which means banded, it doesn't have the groove on top, that finishing groove. Lahatiach betunis, it's not smoothed with some sort of fish skin. It's not sanded down properly. Mechusar kan, it's missing a base, right? Let's say it's a cup that doesn't have the Kiddush cup base. Doesn't make the base for it. Oigin, or a rim, oizin, or a handle, tamei. All of these items, although it's not finished, it's mekabel tumah. But mechusar chatita tahar. But if it's not hollowed out yet, then it's tahar. Okay. If you have a piece of wood that's not hollowed out, you know what that's called? A 2x4. Yeah. So says the Gemara, yeah, okay. If it's not hollowed out yet, it's not makabel tumah yet. Yeah, it's a piece of wood. What are we talking about? Says the Gemara, no, the case is like this. You had a large piece of wood. You're meant to hollow it out fully. You hollowed it out half. So meaning, it's hollowed out enough that you could still use it. So you might think that because it's partially hollowed out, it's makabel tumah, kamash malon. If it's not hollowed out to the dimensions that you want it to be, then it's not makabel tumah. That is all wood. But the same situation by metal is not makabel tumah, meaning wood that's unfinished is makabel tumah, but not metal, even though it's the same. What's the case of metal? Kol shas, go to the next page. Lashuf, it's not filed yet. L'shabetz, it's not studded yet. L'gar, it's not planed yet. L'charke, it's not engraved yet. L'hagish b'kornis, it doesn't have that last straightened out dents from a hammer. L'chusar kain, or oigin, or oizin, it's missing a stand, a base, a handle. Tahar. Mechusar kisoi tame. Now, if it's missing a lid, it's mekabel tuma, because if you have a pot without a lid, the pot itself is still complete, it's still functional. So here's the question. Why is it that a wooden kli that's unfinished is mekabel tuma, but a metal kli that's not unfinished is not mekabel? What's the nafkamina? What's the difference? Wood and metal, it's the exact same kli, but by wood it's mekabel tuma, metal not. Says the Gemara, Maishnahani, what's the difference? Rav Yechon Amar, Hoyel ulkavoid asuyin. Rav Yechon had said, metal kalim are used for kavod. It's like a brake front full of silver. It's used for kavod. And because it's used for kavod, if it's not finished, it doesn't have that kavod aspect yet. As opposed to wood, which is not meant for kavod, it's meant for functionality. It could be functional. Meaning, because metal is meant for kavod, and adding kavod is the little details, so it's not finished yet. Wood, I don't care about kavod. It's not kavod anyway. That's the first pshat. So it's based on kavod usage. Slightly different pshat from Rabbi Nachman. Hoylu d'mein yikarim. He says it's not a matter of kavod or not. It's a matter of cost. Wooden utensils are cheap. Metal utensils are very expensive, and I can't get my full price in the market until it's finished. So it's not for functionality of kavod, it's for cost. So because it doesn't have the cost value yet, because I can't get my value until I have those little finishing, so then it's not finished. It's very similar. Just one is for functionality of kavod, one is for cost. So the Gemara says, what's the difference? What's the nafkamina? My benayu, ekbenayu kli etzem. What about a bone utensil that is unfinished? Apparently bone utensils were very expensive, but they were not used for kavod. I don't know why. They were not used for kavod, but they were very expensive. They were expensive. I guess they look nice, but people didn't actually use them. So if the pshat is that what makes it tahar is because it's expensive, these are also expensive. But if it's for usage of kavod, these are not used for kavod. Then it would be treated like wood. So the Gemara says, Azar of Nachman Tameh, the truth is Rabbi Nachman is Lishitaso, because Rabbi Nachman says that it has to do with expense. And bone utensils are expensive. So says Rabbi Nachman, Kli Etzem, Kikli Matachas Dami, that bone utensils are like metal utensils, in that if it's unfinished, it's not Mekabel Toma. Now says the Gemara, just the one point to finish up this sugya, bone utensils is a shaila of whether it's unfinished or not. Bone utensils are Mekabel Toma. Bone is Mekabel Toma. Right? Plastic is not, a bone is Mekabel Toma. Maybe plastic is, I don't know. But I don't know. Bone is mekabel tuma, says the Gemara. Mechlal d'chli etzem mekabel tuma. Bone utensils are mekabel tuma. Yes. The Tanya, as the Brisa says, Rav Yishmael ben Yoshev Rechem Berka Omer. The pasuk says, "Matam b'chol ma'aseh izim titzchato." Anything made of a goat, you shall purify. Meaning, things that come from a goat are mekabel tuma. What is an example of a kli that comes from a goat? Lahavi davar haba min izim min hakarnayim, a utensil made of horns, min atzlafim, the hooves, shar behema v'chayim minayin, or any part of the animal. So you see, bone is included. How do I know? Tamaloymer b'chol ma'aseh. Now, im kain matam lamer izim. So if all animal byproducts are mekabel tuma, kalim that come from animal byproducts are mekabel tuma. So why does it mention goats? It's prat la'oifus, to exclude birds. Apparently, bird bone is so cheap it's not considered a kli and it's not mekabel tuma. Okay, new Mishnah. The Mishnah basically says like this: we know the halachas of trumas and maisers is only chayv trumas and maisers when it's edible, when it's in the finished product. If you have an apple and nobody eats it, it's so sour, it's unripe. It's not chayv trumas and maisers. So apparently there were these types of almonds. There were bitter almonds. So says the Mishnah, hachayiv b'shkeid mamorim. What is the halacha for maiser for bitter almonds? Pater mesukin, meaning the size of bitter almonds when it's chayiv, then by sweet almonds would be pater, and a chayiv b'mesukin pater b'marim. In other words, you had sweet almonds and bitter almonds. You had small and big. If it's chayiv for bitter, then it's going to be pater for sweet, that size, and vice versa. The Gemara is going to clarify. There were sweet almonds and bitter almonds. Apparently, sweet almonds were good when they were small, but when they got big, they weren't good. Bitter almonds were the opposite. You couldn't eat them when they're small, but you could eat them when they're big. So bitter and sweet are the opposite. Bitter are only edible when they're large. Sweet are only edible when they're small. So sweet almonds will be chayiv when they're small, not when they're big, because they're not edible anymore. Bitter almonds will only be chayiv trumas and maises when they're big, not small. So the Gemara speaks it out. Turn around. Shkeid mamarim, regarding bitter almonds, ketanim chayovim. Oh, I'm sorry, I said the opposite. Bitter almonds are edible when they're small. No, I think I said that. I don't know. Whatever. Bitter almonds are edible when they're small because they're not that bitter yet. But gedolim peturim, but once bitter almonds get big, nobody eats them anymore, and therefore they're pater from trumas and maisus. Mesukim, so bitter almonds are chayav small. Mesukim, sweet almonds are the opposite. Gedolim chayavim, they're only chayav when they're big, because that's when they're sweet. Ketan and peturim. Good. So you have, I don't know why for some reason I'm a mental break. Bitter almonds are chayav when they're small. Sweet almonds are chayav when they're big. Yeah? Okay, good. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Aimer Mishum Aviv. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi says in the name of the father of Yosi, Zev is a lifter. No, both are potter, meaning both types of small almonds are potter. Even bitter almonds, when they're small, are not really that edible. So small almonds are potter by both categories. Okay, that makes sense. He's saying, Mitzias, even bitter almonds, people don't eat on a regular basis when they're small. But Amri La Zev is a lichiyuv. But some say the opposite. He said, no, both are big are chayiv, meaning sweet almonds when they're big are super sweet, and even bitter almonds when they're big are sweet because they're sweetened, and sweet almonds when they're big are also edible. I thought big almonds when they're big are super bitter. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanin b'tzipur g'divrei zev lifter. Okay, he passes as lifter. Amanda Amar zev chayiv. Now, if you hold that he said both big almonds types are chayiv when they're big, but wait a minute, gedol ma'chazu. Bitter almonds that are big are not edible. So what? Right? He's saying both are chayiv. Big almonds, all types of big almonds are chayiv, but there are bitter almonds that are big, so you can't eat them. So why am I chayiv? Says the Gemara, apparently bitter almonds that are big, you could sweeten if you boil them. So because you can make them edible, he holds the chayiv in shumas and maisers. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah and then we'll stop. Because it's a bigger sugya tomorrow. I'll just do the Mishnah. I might have to review it tomorrow, but we'll do it. Hatemed. Okay, temed is you take grape skins and you soak it in water. And then it ferments. It turns into an alcohol. So the halacha basically of the Mishnah has two parts. This is the first part of the Mishnah. It's very simple. And that is temed, before it's fermented, is water in halacha. Simple. It's water in halacha. It kind of looks like water, and it's water in halacha. Once it ferments, it's wine in halacha. Even if it looks watery, it's wine. So it's very simple. Before it ferments, it has the din of water in halacha. By the way, for the laws of brachas and for other things, as we'll see, the Mishnah gives other examples. Once it ferments, it's wine. Okay, very simple. The Mishnah says, what's an example? Hatemed achale hichmitz. Temed, before it ferments, it has a din of water. And therefore, eina nikach b'kesef meiser. The halacha is that when you have meiser sheni funds, you're not allowed to use it to purchase water. You can use it to purchase an animal, you can use it to purchase fruits and vegetables. You're not allowed to use it for water. So because temed, before it ferments, is water, you're not allowed to use it to purchase meiser, you're not allowed to use meiser sheni funds to purchase unfermented temed. And paisalas hamikvah. If it's mayim shuvim, because it has a status of water, as we'll see later on. And anyone who's at a shiva house, and especially if you're asked to do the mishnayos, it's always kind of brutal because you don't really know what you're saying. But basically, water and wine have different halachas when it comes to pasling a mikveh. Water, that's ma'im shuvim, can pasel a mikveh, but wine, as long as it doesn't change the color, cannot pasel a mikveh. Meaning, I could pour in a couple quarts of wine. If it doesn't change the entire mikveh to red, if white wine, it's not gonna pass mikveh because it's yayin, it's not mayim shuvim, it has a different halacha. So temed that's not fermented is water, and therefore it could pass mikveh. But mishehichmitz, once temed ferments, even if it looks like water, it has a status of wine. Therefore nikach bekesef meiser, you could purchase meiser sheni funds could be used to purchase this temed because it's wine, and ain't a posel hamikveh. It's not going to posel hamikveh unless it changes the colors. Now, one last halacha. The halacha is as follows: every time you gave machzah shekel, you had to add a kalbon. A kalbon was a little bit of a piece of metal coin, just to basically to pay for the cost of melting down and any fluctuation in value. That was always to cover it. Special gzeres hakosiv that we learned in Masechah Shkolim: you only pay a kalbon when you're giving your machzah shekel. If I'm paying for you, no machzah, no kalbon. Okay, and if two, okay. So here's the halacha. The Mishnah says, ha'achin ha'shutfin. You have two brothers that their father died, and the father left them money. So here's the halacha. Before they split up the estate, that money is considered the estates. It's neither of theirs. So you have Avram, who had Yitzchak and Yaakov, his two sons. Avram dies. He leaves money to Yitzchak and Yaakov. If they don't formally split up the account, it's just in that shared estate account, the halacha is it's owned by neither of them. Therefore, if ha'achin ha'shutvin, The halach is like this: Kishachayv v'kalbon patur memaiser behema, kishachayv memaiser behema patur mekalbon. Meaning, if they do not split up the estate yet, it's not theirs. So they're not chayiv in the kalbon, because you only chayiv in the kalbon when you pay your own money, not when you're sort of being paid for by others. Paid for by others, in this case, the estate. So I'm potter from the kalbon, but then I'll be chayiv in ma'aser behema. Why? Ma'aser behema, there's one exemption for ma'aser behema if the animal is owned by multiple people. So before it's split up by the estate, it's not owned by multiple people. It's owned by one person, the estate. So therefore, it's chayiv in ma'aser behema, because it's not owned by multiple people. It's owned by one body called the estate, whoever that is, the dead father, whatever it is. But it's going to be potter from the kalbon, because basically it's two separate halachas. The kalbon you only pay the kalbon when you're paying your money, not the estate's money. But then you're chayiv from ma'aser behema. But once you take the money and we split it up, then two separate bank accounts, then we're potter, then we're chayiv in the kalbon. The kalbon is the added coin that you would give for machzah shekel. So if the money is split up in the estate and then we re-partner together, again, the money comes down in the estate. If we separate our ways, that's not a shayla. We're not talking about that. We're talking about where Reuven and Shimon, the two brothers, share one bank account. So if the money was not yet split up, then it's not theirs, it's the estate's. So then they're going to be potter from the kalbon, but they're going to be chayiv in ma'aser behema, because it's not a shutzvis. If they officially split up the account, meaning they split up, divvy up all the money, but they keep one communal account, now they're called shutzvim, because now it's theirs. It's Reuven and Shimon's. They just happen to be partners together. So they'll be chayiv in a kalboim, because they're paying for their own machzah shekel, but they'll be potter from ma'aser behema, because ma'aser behema does not apply by shutzvim that own an animal.